Poppy had always been known for her enviable ability to bravely respond to a crisis with a calm, focused demeanor. She was never rattled or flummoxed or prone to overreaction, which was what made today such a momentous occasion. Poppy Harmon was at this moment completely freaking out. With her mouth hanging open, she finally managed to reclaim her power of speech and leaned forward. "What the hell are you talking about?" Poppy wailed, suddenly lightheaded, desperately trying to steady herself before she fainted and tumbled off the flimsy chair that faced her lawyer, Edwin Pierce, in his spacious, well-appointed office in Palm Desert, California. Edwin's face was drawn, his complexion as pale as pasteurized milk, and his eyes were bloodshot, with the lids hanging at half-mast. The poor man was obviously sleep-deprived, having probably been up all night, dreading this unavoidable and supremely uncomfortable meeting with his client. "As I said, Chester unfortunately had accumulated some debt before he passed away, and, according to my calculations, the sum total he owed—" Edwin's voice trailed off as he punched a few numbers into a calculator program on his computer screen. Poppy noticed his hand shaking as he brushed the keys with his crooked, bony fingers. He was a bundle of nerves. "How much, Edwin?" Poppy urged, wanting to get the bad news over with so she could begin dealing with the situation. Edwin blinked at the screen, almost in disbelief at the final total, and then he cleared his throat before continuing. "Roughly $670,000. Poppy stared blankly at Edwin. She must have heard wrong. Maybe he said $6,000, which would be bad enough, but surely he could not have possibly said $670,000, Edwin repeated. "That's impossible. How on earth did he—" "I would have known if he was spending that much." "It seems Chester had a small gambling problem. He played poker with the boys twice a month. I would hardly call that a gambling problem," Poppy scoffed, still in a state of denial. "He played more than poker, I'm afraid. There were dozens of weekend trips to Las Vegas, according to my records." "Those were business trips," Poppy quickly explained, as if saying the words would make them true. Edwin gave Poppy a sad look of pity. The wife was always the last to know. "Chester was fired from his job a year ago." "What?" Poppy screamed. "I'm guessing from your reaction that he never told you." Poppy shook her head, now on the verge of tears. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't he tell me something like that?" "He was probably too embarrassed. You know Chester, he was a very proud man." Poppy stared at Edwin. "Actually, I'm beginning to suspect that I never actually knew Chester." "I'm sure the stress of hiding all of this from you contributed to his heart attack." Chester had died suddenly 3 weeks ago. He and Poppy had been dining with friends at Wang's in the Desert, a popular Asian fusion restaurant in Palm Springs. As dessert was served, Chester complained of indigestion and excused himself to go to the restroom. When he hadn't returned 20 minutes later, Poppy sent his buddy Al, who was at the table, to go check on him. Al found him slumped over on the toilet in a stall, dead. The days following Chester's sudden death were a blur. Calling friends and relatives, making funeral arrangements, providing emotional support for her daughter, Heather, who was inconsolable over losing her favorite stepfather. There had been 2 others after her biological father, but Chester was her absolute favorite. The last thing on Poppy's mind during all the grief and tears was their finances. Chester had never given any hint they were in any kind of trouble. In fact, they had just splurged on a cruise to the Greek islands, bought a new Chrysler Pacifica hybrid, remodeled a guest suite in their 5-bedroom, 3.5-bath home nestled in the hills above Palm Springs. The house. Poppy absolutely loved their house. "I'm not going to have to sell the house to pay off this debt, am I?" Edwin swallowed hard. She could see his Adam's apple move up and down. That was not a good sign. "Not if you can make the payments on the mortgage."